everybody. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. You are listening to Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. I appreciate you tuning in today, listening, just giving me just a little bit of your time. We have a lot to talk about. We already had a lot to talk about, and then the Tennessean just broke a story about 7 minutes ago about Butch Jones, saying that Butch Jones called a player of the Tennessee Volunteers football team a traitor to the team. It was the same player that helped a young woman who had been raped by other members of the team. And so we have that story. Going to break that story, but before we jump into that, let's just get through all the ways that you can reach us and find us and listen to us. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. As always, search Hot News Talk Radio. We are the first thing that comes up. If you want to listen to us, the aforementioned YouTube, you can go there. You can listen to, or you can stream the episodes live, and you can also check us out after the fact, if that makes any sense to you. So you can go and check our classic episodes. We never call them old. Can't do that. I got that one from Car Talk. I'm not going to lie. That is a great radio program right there. Car Talk. And then you can check us out on the TuneIn Radio app. Okay. Make sure to listen to Binary with Russell Stroud. He's our news director, but he's also our tech expert and enthusiast. He knows more about technology than anybody that I know. And he was talking about the TuneIn Radio app this morning. He actually, if you were listening to the show, walk you through how you search for Hot News Talk Radio. You press the heart button up top. You give us that follow, press play. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. And of course, never forget, hotnewstalkradio.com. So, with all of that out of the way, yeah, this story about Butch Jones, it's shocking. And if it's true, okay, and part of my problem here is that the lawsuit about the culture of rape, the culture of rape on the Tennessee campus, which is being an issue that is being discussed because there have been a number of instances. Tennessee had a bad week last week in terms of just being in the news about this stuff and having players be involved in some form of violence against women or another. And, you know, the week passes, you're trying to stay out of the news, and now you're back in the news, and you're back in the news with the head coach. Okay? Because culture starts from up top. Culture begins at the top level, and the head of the football team is the head coach. And if Butch Jones is calling a player of his traitor to the team for helping a young woman who had been raped, then we've got a serious problem here. We've got a very serious problem. This story, courtesy of the Tennessean, written by Nate Rao and Matt Slovin, 5 minutes old. This article is 5 minutes old, okay? University of Tennessee football coach Butch Jones told one of his players he, quote unquote, betrayed the team after the wide receiver helped a woman who said she was raped by two other football players, according to a new legal filing in a sweeping lawsuit filed by 6 women against the University of Tennessee. Sophomore Dre Bowles, quote, broke down and cried after speaking with his coach, the lawsuit said. Jones later called Bowles back to apologize for calling him a traitor to the team, according to the suit. The two calls with Jones came after Bowles was punched in the mouth and bloodied by teammate Kurt Magid as retribution inside the UT locker room, according to the new filing. Bowles, who transferred to UT Chattanooga shortly after the November 2014 incidents, provided the account of events in a sworn declaration filed in federal court in Nashville. The legal filing is the latest in the ongoing federal lawsuits that have brought renewed scrutiny to UT's athletic department. Also on Wednesday, 2 new women claiming they were also sexually assaulted by football players joined the lawsuit. So, I mean, this lawsuit's been going on for a while, but the details that are coming out from it now continue to get worse and worse for the University of Tennessee. In fact, most of the news that came out last week involving the University of Tennessee have been about cases that have been in the works for a while. And this is the first one that mentions something that Butch Jones did as the coach himself. Okay, and it's jaw-dropping. You know, that you go to your coach to do something right. He should be reporting with you. And instead, what he does is he breaks you down. He tells you that you're a traitor. And Kurt Magid, who is a very good player for UT and who had been playing, all along. He's the enforcer, and you see it a lot in cultures like this where because everyone has to be in one unit and everybody has to be on the same page. If you break rank with the unit, okay, you are the one that gets ostracized. And in the case of a football locker room in which there's a lot of testosterone and a lot of masculinity going on, you being ostracized can also be you being punched in the face, which is what happened to this young man, Dre Bowles, and he transferred to UTC to get away, is what it appears. It appears that he transferred to UTC to get away, and that is unfortunate that this whole thing happened. So here's what's going to happen here, because I don't have all of the details of this. This story just broke about 15 minutes ago, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a social worker on tomorrow to help me talk about this. I actually was going to have her on to help me talk about shame and our use of social media, especially when it comes to going after sports stars and treating them poorly. But she's going to help me talk about this story as well, because that also falls inside of her purview, inside of the things that she is capable of knowing and talking about. So I'm interested in talking about that, but that just stinks. I mean, this is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio Clutch with Keon Rose. We're talking about the problem that the Vols are having. Okay, and let's do a little, if we can, let's do a little retrospective of the week that was for the University of Tennessee last week, because they had the litany of stories break last week about violence against women, and it sounds ridiculous. Okay, like when I first heard the lawsuit, it sounded ridiculous. What do you mean the school has a culture of violence against women? Like that, to me, that doesn't even sound plausible. And when I went to go look up the stuff, I'm just like, okay, there's a lot more here than what originally met the eye. But then there was this little ticky-tack thing at the end where it was like, yeah, and they had the rapper Lil Jon on, and he obviously promotes a culture of violence. So then mentally, and I did not mean to, but I think mentally I dismissed the story a little bit. Like, really? This seems ticky-tack. But like the more that you delve into some of these stories and the more information that comes out, and folks, we haven't seen the end of this. And by the way, during the regular season when the Vols were losing, and I was talking about Butch Jones having a hot seat, his seat was not as hot then as it is now. It's real hot. And this will be, by the way, the second time that the University of Tennessee will have lost a coach who has showed some promise for things that happened outside of the field of play. The previous basketball coach before Rick Barnes got involved with some NCAA violations, and then he ended up being fired, even though it looked like, honestly, the Vols were turning around basketball-wise, for sure. Now, I think Rick Barnes is certainly an upgrade, but at the time, you're just like, well, look, this guy can do some good here, and then he gets involved in the NCAA sanctions. But this is worse, because what you're doing here involves hurting somebody who's not on the football team. Now you're hurting somebody in the quote-unquote real world, and maybe that's part of the problem, that we don't see what happens in the world of sport as the real world. So guys get away with things because they're distant from us, okay? And there's lots of ways to distance yourself from people. There's lots of ways to have distance, okay? We're distanced from athletes because we don't look anything like them. We're not anywhere near as athletic. We're not anywhere near as strong. We can't do the things that they do. So there's that. We're distanced away from them because there's celebrity involved, that when you are that good at the things that you do, you get a little bit of famous. Most of us are a little jealous of that. We'd like to be famous ourselves. And so we put more distance between them and us. And then finally, we put some distance between them because, well, they're playing football and they could be rich. There's a possibility that, you get into the NFL draft, you've got your chance there, you could be rich. So all of those things start to add up, and we put some distance between them, and we don't see their actions as real actions. They don't affect us in any way, and we're free to just ignore it if we want to. The problem with that, of course, is that those actions do have real world implications, which is one of which is that first off, the women who are being assaulted, who are being abused, who are being ignored, they continue to be trampled on. Okay, they are still suffering, regardless of how long it's been, regardless of when it's happened. They're still suffering, and that's a problem. That's real world implication number one. And real world implication number two is, if we choose to ignore this, then we're basically saying, as a society, and especially as a society of sports fans, that's fine. You can get away with that. We don't have a big problem with this. And that is hugely inappropriate. Hugely inappropriate. That's not okay. And so there's a lot to dig there. There's a lot more to dig, and I don't have in my, like, right off the top of my head the list of cases. I'm pulling it up right now to kind of go through it, because it's lengthy. There's a lot of things involved in a lot of these cases, going all the way back to Peyton Manning, and the university hid the story and buried it. And I don't want to single out the University of Tennessee. I think that is a problem also, that we do this, like, you isolate schools. Florida had a bad reputation for a while of having players, and really it's just guys that Urban Meyer recruits, but of just having players that broke the law, and you just go, look at that school over there being terrible and bad, and you even use your rivalries to justify it. Like, they're terrible because they're Florida, and I'm a Tennessee fan, and I don't like it. And by the way, I'm not exempt from this. I'm a Texas fan. Whenever the University of Oklahoma has problems, I am filled with glee. But that's not okay, because real people are being hurt. Real people are being hurt, and you've got to separate sports fan from actual person living in real life. And everybody has trouble doing it. It's a hard thing to ask yourself to do when you're basically used to rooting against those people and those colors. And there's going to be, not the jokes, they're not going to be jokes, but it's going to be someone pointing it out. Next week, it's going to be on some sign on College Game Day on ESPN in the morning, someone with a sign about how the University of Tennessee is filled with rapists. And while that kind of awareness means something, that level of shaming doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the victims. It doesn't prevent anything for future victims. All that you're doing now is making fun of the university and everyone who attends there, regardless of their level of participation in, well, what is essentially rape culture on that campus in particular. But let's not pretend like this doesn't happen on other college campuses all around the country, because it does. Okay. The Florida State, Jameis Winston went there, and he allegedly raped a young woman. The case got dropped, settled out of court, buried, and we never really dug into it any further once it got dropped, right? And the thing is, Jameis Winston didn't personally go through great lengths to bury the story. The university did. The university went through great lengths to bury that story. And that's bothersome, because how do you separate the conflict of interest that a university will have? And you're listening to AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose, talking about the story that Butch Jones basically called a student, a football player, wide receiver, Dre Bowles. He called him a traitor to the team after he reported a couple of players having raped a young woman, and he helped her out, and Butch Jones called him a traitor. He did call and apologize. Okay, so at least we have that, but you shouldn't have called him that in the first place. And you are the leader of these young men, telling this young man, you did the wrong thing. He did the right thing, and then you tell him he did the wrong thing because it went against the team. Because he followed the minority. And that's wrong. And if this is true, okay, the Tennessean is reporting this. If this is true, the huge problem here is that that lawsuit that says that Tennessee's got a culture of rape is correct. And Butch Jones basically makes himself a lightning rod by telling a player that he did the wrong thing in helping somebody out in a case where they had been raped. I mean, that's so wrong. It's just like I can't even wrap my mind around it. Like the vastness and the size and the mass of what that means. It's hard to even put into words, and I was not prepared to put it into words because the story broke moments before I came on the air. The issue with this, and I think the huge issue is that something that we cannot lose sight of is that many universities around the world struggle with this. Okay? They struggle with the problem of dealing with sexual abuse on their campuses. Okay, that so many of these things often go unreported that when they do go reported, you do have to take them seriously. You know, and we're not going to sit here and exclude Georgia. We're not going to sit here and exclude Mississippi or Alabama because we're all implicated. We're all affected by this because it happens everywhere. I think Tennessee has got very high-profile versions of it, but we can't sit here and pretend like that's the only place that it happens. And when we do this, when we do the thing where we're like, oh, yeah, the University of Florida, all those players are criminals. University of Tennessee, look, all those players are rapists. We do the thing where we isolate the problem to just one university, that we say to the University of Tennessee, this is a problem that you're having. You, just you, not us. Okay, if I'm an Auburn Tigers fan, not us, just you. And that's a problem because everybody's got that problem. Everybody has the issue of sexual abuse on college campuses. It's something of an epidemic. And I've got a real big problem with that. And that story broke and I did so much. I was preparing for this show and then everything that I prepped, I just had to throw out the window. But I did get to keep some of it. We're going to talk about NASCAR. We're going to talk about the race this last Sunday, the closest race finish in the history of the Daytona 500. In the history of the Daytona 500. So many things to talk about in that race. The fast finish, the drama, it was exciting. So we're going to talk to Sam Blevins, our NASCAR insider, about that coming up in a little bit. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch with Keon Rose, and we are rather unfortunately talking about the University of Tennessee and rape some more. It's not something that is pleasant to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I know you don't want to talk about it. I know that if you are a Vols fan, you really don't want to talk about it. But we're here, okay? And it's something that's necessary to talk about. I don't think we have a choice in passing that particular story over because of the many implications, not just in society as a whole, but even if you want to just make it about sports, how it is, like what happens to Butch Jones here could set a precedent for how we treat this kind of thing moving forward. I don't know if we necessarily have a precedent for that, for getting rid of a coach because of something that his players were necessarily involved in, if the coach is good enough. And again, that's the sad truth about sports, is that it's such a meritocracy that if you can justify how good someone is at winning, we almost always let them off the hook. And by we, I mean those who hire those coaches. And unless fans make a gigantic stink about it, really, nothing's going to happen. because ultimately jobs are on the line that are not related to the assaults and the abuses of students on that campus. But I feel like if you're going to pay a head coach of a college football program millions and millions of dollars, they should at least be somewhat accountable for what it is that their players do. And in the case of Butch Jones, he took the wrong side of that. Okay? Young man helps out a girl who had been raped. You don't get to call him a traitor. This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We'll be talking Daytona 500 and NASCAR here on the show next.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm going to Carter Shooting Supply.
Carter Shooting Supply?
That's right, Carter Shooting Supply. They're having a great sale on all of their guns right now, and it's name brands like Smith & Wesson, Ruger, Springfield, their AR-15s. They've got the hottest gun in the land right now, the Sky 9mm. Man, it comes in all the cool colors. If you're an Alabama fan, they've got crimson. If you're a big orange fan, they've got an orange one. You know, all the women are loving the pink one in Tiffany blue. Plus, it has a lifetime warranty replacement. If the gun is stolen, all you need is your police report or receipt, and they'll replace it free. It has a 60-day full money-back guarantee. That's Carter Shooting Supply. They're in Harrison right there at 6210 Highway 58.
Are they online?
Yes, they are. That's cartershootingsupply.com, or give them a call, 423-344-1099. Now, this sale's not going to last too long, so you need to hurry up and get there. And they do have a great indoor shooting facility. You can get your Tennessee handgun carry permit also. That's Carter Shooting Supply, 423-344-1099. You need a place for your party or maybe a wedding reception for 100 or even more. Maybe you'd like to host a small trade show for your business, and you need a very affordable venue. Are you looking for a place for your birthday gala or services to start up a church? Look no further than the Hidden Gem in Hickson. It's an overlooked, newly appointed reception hall right here in Hickson, Tennessee. Big space, small price. That's right, big space, small price. Call Mr. Chu and ask for a tour. 316-7388. That's 423-316-7388. He'll tell you a lot more about the venue. Rent this venue today. Just call 423-316-7388 and ask for Mr. Chu.
Hello, I'm Mike Little, candidate for criminal court judge with 25 years of criminal court experience, which makes me the most qualified candidate. The experience I have gained from handling over 4,000 cases in state and federal court has equipped me with the ability to be fair, impartial, and independent. As your next criminal court judge, I will focus on keeping Hamilton County safe. I view this position as a public service and will strive to improve the daily operation of the court. I humbly ask for your trust and vote in the March 1st Republican primary.
Paid for by the committee to elect Mike Little. Barry Abbott, treasurer.
Expect breezy and colder weather out there through the nighttime. A few mountain snow showers and sprinkles and flurries for the valleys possible. Lows 34 to 37. For Thursday, after a morning flurry, breezy, chilly all day, highs lower 40s with more sunshine returning Friday. New Burger King grill dogs are in restaurants everywhere right now. Be one of the first to get your hands on the new Burger King flame-grilled hot dogs grilled to perfection, now at Burger King restaurants everywhere. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Core. On AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A 40-year-old man was shot in the leg on Tunnel Boulevard at 3:45 p.m. yesterday. The victim didn't know of any suspect information. The criminal violent crimes investigators are still following all leads. He suffered from 2 non-life-threatening gunshot wounds to the leg. If you have any information on this crime, call 423-698-2525. In Bradley County, an arrest has been made after over 100 tires were dumped into the backyard of Faith Memorial Church. Jimmy Dupree, the pastor, discovered the tires last week. Sheriff Watson says, "We worked this case throughout the weekend. After removing all those tires from the church campus and after following several leads, we were able to file charges against Joshua Evans for aggravated criminal littering, which is a Class E felony," says Sheriff Watson. The Tennessee Aquarium Board of Trustees elected Keith Sanford as the new president and CEO of the Tennessee Aquarium. He's succeeding Charlie Arant, who served as the aquarium's president and CEO for more than 20 years. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot News Talk Radio.
Hot News Talk 1240.
This is AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. We had a thrilling Daytona 500, and to help us talk about it and break it down is my good friend and our NASCAR insider, Sam Blevins. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing just fine, Keon. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good, but boy, after watching that race,
to be on with you again.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Always appreciate your knowledge and the time that you're able to spend with us here on the show.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
So let's just jump into it, because this, what a thrilling race, the Daytona 500.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah. It's literally, and I heard you say this earlier in the show. I was listening. I'm in the truck. I'm in my truck right now, going across town. I was listening to your show on AM 1240, and I heard you mention it was the closest race in Daytona 500 history, and that's true. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. Because we've had what? The Daytona 500 started in 1959, so this would be the
50th, right?
Well, the 50th was in 2008, so this would be like the, 56 maybe? 7th?
Yes.
Consistent running of the Daytona 500. That, out of all those races, this one happened to be the closest finish. That's amazing for me to wrap my mind around. And that's just amazing.
It is. I actually thought Truex caught him at one point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you see, what even blew me away by just even considering this is the closest race to Daytona 500 history. Do you know anything about the very first Daytona 500?
I do not, but I'm sure that you do.
Well, I probably don't know as much as some people that were actually there, but it was between Lee Petty and another person. For the life of me, I can't remember who it was, but it was literally a photo finish. It took them, I think, 3 days to find out the winner of the race.
Wow.
And it wound up being Lee Petty. But it's just like, I mean, and to think about that being a really close race. Literally, it was a photo finish, took them 3 days. This one turns out to be to the thousandth of a second. I don't think I've ever even heard of a race ever being determined to the thousandth of a second.
Me
crazy.
neither. And if you look at the still picture of it, I mean, he just got there before him.
Oh yeah. You know, I've heard some people say that the way Hamlin kind of closed in on Truex and took it away from him like that. That was straight out of Earnhardt's driving book. I know I may be stepping on some toes, Earnhardt fans out there. I apologize, but it was really Earnhardt kind of to say.
Very, and kind of uncharacteristic of Hamlin, from what I understand, from just the research that I was doing.
He's not really that aggressive of a driver, I don't think. He's more of a passive aggressive. He's more of a passive, kind of does his own thing kind of driver. You know, he's always been like that.
And And like historically, like he would have probably gone high there. And instead he goes low, shuts the door. And
yeah.
very, very uncharacteristic.
And that was exciting to see because, I don't think I've seen that kind of race in a long time. I mean, in a long time. I don't know. It's just, that was cool. That was really cool.
It was. And in the race, Dale Jr., he wrecks his car.
Yeah, that blew my prediction out. Him, and then that made me mad. Him and Chase Elliott both in the same wreck.
I know.
Wow. I'm like, no.
How unfortunate,
oh my
man.
God.
That was crazy. And I was like, really, like, because we were talking about it obviously last Thursday, and I was super excited to.
Oh yeah.
And I hadn't really seen much about Chase Elliott, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to lock in on him. And then they both wreck, and I'm like, well, I mean, those are.
Well, yeah.
Those are the guys I wanted to watch.
No, I mean, he's got the whole season. Chase Elliott's got the whole season. Have him, Dale Jr. too. But I mean, in all retrospect, Chase Elliott did win the Xfinity Series race the day before, and that's kind of like that's the second biggest race at Daytona, probably. That whole weekend at least. That's the second biggest race. So, and that was good for him. He had a great starting position. So, I mean, he did a great job, regardless of him wrecking. He did a great job, especially for someone that this was their very first full Cup race and the very first full Cup season. So, I mean, he did a great job for a rookie.
We're talking to Sam Blevins, our NASCAR insider here on Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. And, he's going to have other opportunities. The chase for the Cup, the way that the chase is set up, one race doesn't kill you. So, sad that he wrecked, but he's going to do pretty good this season, I imagine.
Right. And we got a bunch of other races to go through. We got Atlanta coming up this week, and I'm excited for that race. Atlanta's a middle ground track. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's basically right in that middle ground. It's a lot like what the Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's a lot like Charlotte Motor Speedway in that. It's a really good track to go to too. If you've never been.
Okay, I mean, one of these days, man. That's the dream. I've never been to a NASCAR race, but
to go.
Like one of these days,
you need to go. And I'll tell you something. If you or anyone else out there listening has never been to a race, the two best tracks to go to from Chattanooga, Atlanta or Talladega. They're the two easiest to get to. It doesn't cost that much as it would to go to another track, and it can be a day's trip. It's been a day's trip for me. So that's and that's something when you go to a NASCAR race, you're going to spend a lot of money. Just keep that in mind. But if you want to go to a race and you still want to stay kind of close to home, Atlanta or Talladega, two best tracks to go to, in my opinion.
Good to know. And I think we all know like the history, especially behind Talladega. But in Atlanta, what drivers, what racers are we looking for this week?
Well, I would say also, I mean, you obviously you cannot count Eddie Hamlin out.
No, that's what we learned.
Race this week. Maybe Austin Dillon. He finished in the top 10. It's really funny thinking about it. All these drivers that had during the race, they didn't do so well during the race. Dillon, he started pretty good, but he fell back into the pack. He got in a big swarm of cars. Wound up finishing like number 5 in the race.
That's pretty incredible.
How does that happen? I don't understand. He lost the draft in the beginning of the race, and that's bad. So I don't. It's just, I would say any driver, I don't think there's really one driver to look to. I would say look for the drivers that didn't do so hot last week during the race, but they finished really good. I don't know why that happened, but I think that's kind of an interesting point. I think that's something to watch for in those drivers next week.
Also, I have a question about Daytona, because there was early in that race, there was a part of that race where I was watching it early on, and there wasn't a whole lot of passing or aggressive moves early, and then in the second half of the race, that's when everything really started to open up. Could that have anything to do with why certain guys started off slow and finished well?
I think what the deal was is, we had a lot of rookies last week in that race, and we had a lot of veteran drivers. But, those guys haven't ran a full-length race in 2.5, almost 3 months now. I think what they were trying to do, they were just trying to set the car. They were trying to get a feel for the track. They were trying to figure out, okay, what strategies am I going to use? And then in the second half, they executed those strategies. And so that's what I think was happening. It's not that anyone was scared or anything, or they just didn't know what they were doing. It's just they were trying to build up, okay, we got this X amount of laps to go. It's this lap. We got X amount of laps to go. What can I do to get ahead of these guys and put myself in the front, or if not, or even in near the front?
Gotcha.
A lot of mental, what's the word? I can't even think of it. Stimulation going on.
I hear that.
Which is something I'm not good at. So that's why I'm on the radio talking about NASCAR instead of actually being in NASCAR, driving NASCAR.
Correct. Those who can't go into broadcasting, I suppose.
That's exactly what the deal is.
So we're talking to Sam Blevins, our NASCAR insider here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. So my question about NASCAR is this, and it's kind of a long-winded analogy, but stay with me. I'll try and bring it back around. In the NBA, there's legitimately just maybe 4 teams who could really win the title in any given year. And you look at other sports, more teams have a chance. Different teams have a chance. The Panthers make it all the way to the Super Bowl, even though nobody thought they were going to make it there. NASCAR looks like it's starting to open up more to be more like the NFL than the NBA. Is this a good thing for the sport, or is it better when one person really dominates?
I think it's good for the sport, to be honest. Don't get me wrong. It's great to have one driver that can dominate. He can kind of carry the sport, be kind of the face of the sport. Because that's what happened with Earnhardt and Petty. Those were the two faces for a long, long, long time, and they still are, but not to the degree they used to be. But they were the faces of the sport. But I think it's good when you have the teams we have, the big teams, like Hendrick Motorsports, and Joe Gibbs Racing, and Roush Racing, and Penske, all those big teams. They have a little smaller teams, like the Wood Brothers, and some smaller other teams that have maybe just 1 or 2 drivers on their teams. And I think I know it's kind of a roundabout way to say it, but I think it's kind of a good I think it's kind of a good thing when we have underdogs win and come out of nowhere do amazing things during the season. I think that's a good thing.
I think so too. Because I don't know. Sometimes I end up flip-flopping on where I come down on that. Because when one person dominates, that they do draw attention to the sport because of how dominant they are. But, I want the person that I'm rooting for to have a chance to win also. So it just kind of plays out that way. And I think NASCAR is a sport where a lot of these guys are starting to get more name recognition than they used to, and be more household names than just to NASCAR fans.
That's right. It's with NASCAR expanding its horizons and becoming more commercially appealing. It's not to the degree it was back in the 70s and the 60s, where you just had it was a southern sport, and it was a regional sport, and no one up in New York or Pennsylvania, nobody knew what it was. It just comes with that. And honestly, if you want to be successful, if you're a sport and you want to be successful, it goes for other things like businesses too. You have to broaden your horizons and try new things, try new ventures, and I think that's what NASCAR is trying to do.
And that's awesome, because it's a great sport, and I think that more people should get to check it out. Before I let you go here, I got one question, not a NASCAR question, but I know you're a Tennessee fan, and by extension, of course, a Peyton Manning fan, the Broncos want an answer from Peyton Manning as to what it is that he's going to do. He needs to make up his mind because they need to figure out whether they're going to cut him or he's going to retire.
Right.
What do you think he should do?
You say that again?
What do you think Peyton should do?
I think he should. I think he should give it up. I think he's got 2 Super Bowls now. He's had a great NFL career. He's had an incredible NFL career. He's went to the SEC. He's went to a conference championship twice. He fortunately was shitted out of the Heisman, but he was second. But he was in the running for the Heisman. I think it's time for him to stop, take a deep breath, and enjoy life. I think it is finally time for him to do that. He's proved everything he set out to prove.
Yeah, I hear you, buddy. All right, that's Sam Blevins, our NASCAR insider here on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thanks for joining me, man.
No problem. Thanks for having me on, and I will talk to you again next week.
Absolutely.
All right. See you later.
It's always a pleasure to have Sam on. He's so knowledgeable. Make sure to have just everything researched before he comes on the show. Just good at explaining NASCAR, which to me, I'm not great at explaining NASCAR. I like it. I watch it. But explaining it, that's not something I'm very good at. So I'm glad to have Sam join me as always. So here's a story that I wanted to talk about. It's kind of a story that's flown under the radar a little bit because of the NFL Combine coming up. It did get to the light some, but Auburn running back Peyton Barber did a lot of good things with the Tigers. I think he got his opportunity because of an injury. It didn't look like he was even going to start. He was like a second rotation back, even working his way into the third rotation. And he's entered the NFL draft. He declared for the NFL draft. And when he got asked why he was declaring for the NFL draft, he said it's because his mother is homeless. And I read that and I was looking at that and I'm like, man, how does this happen? Okay, that you have a guy playing college football in a high-profile school, in a high-profile conference, and his mother is homeless, and he's playing for free. Like, that to me is where it starts to feel wrong, to the point where, say Peyton Barber wanted to finish out getting a college education. Okay? Like, you don't know that. I don't know that. But, like, what if he did? Because all of the people who say players shouldn't get paid because they're getting to go to college for free always say that, like, the free education is worth it. But Peyton Barber can go to the NFL and try and make some money now to help his mother, or he can go to college and try and see if he can, finish college and try and see if he can help her out long term. But she can't wait. She is homeless. She is actually homeless. So again, why do we allow this to happen? Meanwhile, his head coach, Gus Malzahn, who's not a bad person, by the way. Like, I don't want to make this seem like coaches are just terrible people for making lots of money. That's what they get paid to do. My thing is that they should pay the athletes actually responsible for the coach's success. They should pay those guys too. And I'm not even saying pay them millions. I'm not saying work out contracts. If you have a stipend, okay, if you have a stipend for the athletes and there is enough money to go around, if you have a stipend, it would go a long way to at least making this somewhat fair. The guy's out there putting his body on the line, and he has to make a tough decision as to whether or not he wants to stay at Auburn, finish out school, or go to the NFL to try and make some money to help his mother, who is homeless. Okay, and this is not the first time that this has ever happened. User Nico Suave 2020 from Reddit, he made a great point that Devin Hester, when he was at the University of Miami, was actually going to return to Miami, but then Hurricane Katrina came along, wiped out the house, and so then he decided to go to the NFL to try and make some money. And again, he's put in a position where he's already not making any money for the actual work and effort that he's putting in. So he's forced to make this weird decision about money that no, 19, 20, 22-year-old should ever have to make. Like just making like these bizarre money decisions because the thing that they do also as a full-time student in school, which I'm telling you, I've been a full-time student in school. I am a full-time student in school, and it's not easy to do already. Like if you do that and have a part-time job, your life is just basically crammed with nothing but work and school. What if he wanted to have a part-time job? Now he's got work and school and football, and all of these things compete, and all of these things matter because if his grades don't stay up, he loses football. If he doesn't have money, then, he may not be eating, and if he's not eating, then he won't be good at football. Like it's all connected. Like we cannot separate these things. Like the education is separate from the football playing, and so if you do well in football, you get the education. Like you can't separate the two because not being good at football is not an option if you want to have the education. And vice versa. So if foregoing the education means you don't get to play football, depending on the strictness of whatever school you're going to, okay? Which is why it's interesting in the NBA where you have these one-and-done players, and they're just like, you know what? I'm not going to class. I'm entering the NBA draft next season. Ben Simmons at LSU, I'm not going to class. Why? Why? I'm going to get my grades to a point where I'm not going to be able to fail out of this class, and then I'm going to stop going to class. Or I'm going to stop focusing on class and focus more on basketball because I'm not majoring in whatever it is the class I'm taking and missing. I'm majoring in basketball. Okay? And so you have that already as an issue, but I just think because you're not paying players, all of these weird moral problems start to pop up about whether or not you're actually correct in paying players. You're incorrect if you don't pay them. Okay, and Peyton Barber's situation, and I hope he makes it into the NFL. I really do. I hope he goes into the NFL and he kills it, and he does a great job because my heart goes out to him and his mother and anybody who struggles with homelessness, because I think we also have this idea in our heads that homeless people are just lazy and they're dirty and they're smelly and they beg at the side of the road. That it's very easy to become homeless. That you are, if your savings aren't as full as you thought they were, and a number of other things, you're a couple of steps away from becoming homeless. And if you don't bounce back very quickly, you could stay there. Okay, and I hope that he makes it to the NFL, even if he just makes it to a practice squad team. Practice squad salary is nothing to sniff at, and you can do something with that. Okay, so Peyton Barber, I hope he gets it done. I really do. Quick hits here. Coming down to the end of the show, and I just got one thing that I wanted to talk about. It was just something I wanted to just cram into the show. Jack Del Rio, the Raiders head coach, and Bill Belichick think that coaches in the NFL should be able to challenge any play. Just any play. Just all of them. And Jack Del Rio said, if we can make it right, why not? I have one really good reason as to why not. The game of football is already 1 million hours long, and most of it is not football. Okay? Most of it is just replays and commercials. And to me, personally, I like watching football on Sunday, but I like watching football on Sundays, not replays on Sundays. And this has a trickle effect. It's going to trickle into college football if the NFL seems to like it and nobody bothers with it. It's going to trickle into college football, and it's going to ruin my college football too. I want to watch football, not replays. You're listening to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. That's me. Thank you for joining me today, giving me just a little bit of your time. We're going to have a social worker on the show to talk about Kurt Rambis and the University of Tennessee tomorrow. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch. I'll see you in 24 hours.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.